Every empire swears its money is safe. Every government says its promises will last forever. But history keeps showing us the same thing. Every time they are wrong. From Rome to France, from the Confederacy to modern Lebanon, people have woken up to the same morning again and again. Their savings had suddenly become worthless, their salaries meant nothing anymore, and their futures have been taken from them by systems they once believed were solid. Collapse is not rare. In fact, collapse is the rule. The real question is not whether financial systems fail, but what you do when they do. Believing that money is permanent is the most dangerous financial mistake you can make. We look at our bank accounts, trust our national currencies, and assume they are rock solid. But money is not rock. Money is trust. And sometimes trust disappears overnight. That's why history is both so brutal and so instructive. Every collapse leaves traces behind, signs that show what truly protects wealth and what can vanish into dust in an instant. If you look closely, you'll notice something important. The people who survived these disasters were not the ones who trusted the system the most. They were the ones who doubted first. Think about the Byzantine Empire. Most people remember it as Eastern Rome, the half that somehow managed to survive for another 1,000 years after Western Rome fell. At the center of its economy was the gold solidus. It was so reliable that merchants across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia accepted it without hesitation. For centuries, it was the closest thing the medieval world had to a global reserve currency. You naturally assume they learned their lesson from Rome's earlier disaster with the silver denarius, the period when emperors debased the coin until it was basically tin with a silver coating. We've told that story before. But no, centuries later, the Byzantines made the exact same mistake with gold. They lowered its purity, minted it thinner, and mixed in cheaper metals. At first, no one noticed. Then trust began to crack. The coin that once anchored Mediterranean trade turned into just another political fiction. Debasement destroyed its credibility, and with it, the Byzantine economy lost the stability it had enjoyed for generations. So who survived? Not those who trusted paper promises. Merchants who quietly held real gold or land beyond the empire's reach preserved their wealth. Everyone else watched their money evaporate. That leads to the first major lesson. Governments cannot resist the temptation to dilute their money. And when they do, real value escapes into assets they cannot print. But not every collapse is caused by rulers manipulating currency. Sometimes shocks arrive out of nowhere. In the mid-14th century, Europe was hit by the Black Death. Between 1347 and 1351, nearly half of Europe's population died. Cities emptied, villages vanished, trade stopped. Yet the economic outcome was not just destruction. When half the labor force disappears, labor becomes extremely valuable. Survivors could demand higher wages. Land and food, once scarce, became abundant relative to people. Anyone with cash, silver, goods, or simply the ability to work suddenly held enormous leverage. Land that once cost a fortune could be bought for almost nothing. Houses stood empty, fields went unworked. Survivors were buyers in a desperate market. If this sounds familiar, it should. We lived through a modern version during COVID. Supply chains broke down, governments printed trillions, and those with liquidity accumulated assets while people living paycheck to paycheck fell behind. Housing prices exploded, stock markets recovered, but millions struggled just to pay rent. The pattern is clear. Pandemics redistribute wealth. They always have. Survivors of the Black Death climbed the social ladder. Survivors of COVID with cash bought what others could no longer hold. It's an uncomfortable lesson, but a true one. Crises reward the prepared. And this isn't limited to pandemics. Banking systems have repeatedly shown how dangerous the too big to fail myth really is. Even in 14th century Florence, Europe's financial capital at the time, powerful banks collapsed, depositors were ruined, trade froze. Ordinary people learned a hard truth. Size is not safety, and reputation is not protection. This lesson repeats every century, from medieval Florence to Lehman Brothers in 2008 to Lebanese banks freezing accounts. Institutions exist to make profit, not to guarantee your survival. When they fall, they take you with them. And the most unsettling part is this: collapse is not ancient history. It's happening now. In Lebanon, people woke up to locked bank doors, frozen accounts, and a currency that lost over 90% of its value. Lifelong savings vanished. Everyone who trusted the system was wiped out. All of these stories point to the same message. Survival does not come from blind trust. It comes from real assets, real skills, and understanding how fragile systems truly are. Collapse is a tragedy, but it is also an opportunity. For the unprepared, it is destruction. For the prepared, it becomes a turning point. History shows that crises transfer wealth from those who trust to those who prepare. So the question is not whether everything will fall apart. It will. The real question is this: will you be left holding promises or holding something real? They say history doesn't repeat itself, but if you ignore it, it will still crush you.